We are Ruth and Martin, and we spent 10 days on an African safari in Kenya and Tanzania.
Wow, 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 wow.
It's a dream trip for many, but also a complicated one. So we thought we'd do a video on how we plan the trip, what the safari experience in Kenya and Tanzania is like, some practical tips, wildlife facts, and some personal insights.
I can't believe how many lions we saw today.
Hey everyone, welcome back to our channel and thank you for watching this video. Now this is something that we typically don't do or haven't done in the past, which is a how-to video, but we received so many questions on our African safari trip. So we thought it might be helpful to share with you how we booked this trip so that when you come to book an African safari, and we hope you do because it's such an amazing experience, that you have a little bit more insight into how to do that. So with that, we're gonna dive right in. So segment one is going to be how to book a safari, all the research and the steps that you will take to book your ultimate dream safari. So segment two is about how to prepare and how to pack for a safari, though we are not going to go too deep into the packing aspect, but we'll give you some thoughts to consider when packing for your safari. Segment three is about what it's like to be on safari, from the lodges to the game drives and everything in between. Segment four is about the wildlife, and we're going to do a quick overview of what you can expect to see and importantly what you may not see. Segment 5 are some key learnings that we took away from our trip, and hopefully they'll help you provide greater insight into what you can expect when you go out on safari. Seeing nature in its raw, most beautiful form is incredible and something that we will always cherish. But how do you plan that trip? Now, to be fair, you can hire a travel agent, one that specializes in African safari. But if you're like us, who like to plan and book and learn as we go, then this video will hopefully help you. I think it's important that you start off by asking yourself 5 questions. Question number 1 is, how much time and budget do I have? If you have 2 weeks, then you're looking at probably realistically a 9 to 10 day safari, giving you time on the front end and back end to get to and from the safari destination. Question number 2 is, what are you looking for in terms of experience? Are you looking for a traditional, so to speak, African safari? That's kind of what we were looking for with Kenya and Tanzania. Or do you want to go gorilla trekking in Uganda? So that's another type of safari, but more specialized. So make sure you understand what type of safari you're looking for so your expectations can be met. There's obviously a lot of different locations, and that can be somewhat dictated by time, it could be somewhat dictated by budget, it could also be dictated by other factors such as you're trying to redeem airline points or hotel points and you may have better luck in South Africa than you do in Kenya. Also ask yourself, what sort of wildlife do I want to see? If you want to see elephants, then there are certain parks that are better known for that. So you would want to try and focus in on those parks, like Amboseli in Kenya. Holy moly, we saw so many elephants. In fact, it was almost too many elephants. And that's kind of a weird thing to say, but it was like, wow, we just couldn't stop seeing elephants. So another consideration would be the Great Migration. If you wanted to go see that iconic movement of animals, then in a certain time of year, you need to be in Kenya. Another time of the year, you need to be in Tanzania. And the numbers and where they are and their movement is going to vary depending upon the time of year. And then lastly, time of year. And that's going to be one of the most critical decisions you ask yourself is, when can I go? Because depending upon the answer to that question, some parks, some countries will be better for safari experience than others. We went in June and it was coming right off the rainy season, or the first rainy season of the year. And we still had some effects of that rainy season, as I'm sure you'll saw in the video. If you go during the rainy season, your experience is going to be completely different. It's also going to be much more limited. If you go in the height of the dry season, it's going to be also different because the animals are their behavior in terms of when they're out and more active is going to be much more compact. It's also going to be a lot hotter, a lot dustier, and even as you saw in the video, it was pretty dusty for us and we just came off the rainy season. So ask yourself those questions. Where do you take that information? For us, we went to a booking aggregator called safaribookings.com, and this is not endorsed or sponsored by them, but it's just where we started to sort of understand the landscape. So by putting in qualifying filters as to our budget, our time, our duration, we were able to refine our search into certain different areas. We knew already that we had wanted to go to Kenya and Tanzania, so that was going to be the location. And then with those filters, we were able to narrow it down. The results you get back are a long list of all the different tour operators that are operating in that area. So we zeroed in on those safari tour operators that had a track record, that had a history, and that history defined by reviews. And so qualifying of 4 stars or 5 stars, it had to be sort of in that range. So let's be real, a safari is a ton of money, and you want to make sure you're going with someone who has a history, has a track record, and one that is delivering consistently top-notch service and experiences for their paying customers. So we narrowed our list down. We then narrowed it down to 3. First off, they had a website, which all of them did. We then contacted each individually, gave them our parameters, and asked for a specific quote. And that's very important that you get a specific quote that runs down everything that you're going to get on your safari. And you'll see at the end of that quote, the final cost. It'll show all the inclusions, all the exclusions, and then time at each park. We took that information from all 3 of them, made some changes, and replied back with those changes, and then got quotes, and then compared the 3. At the end of the day, it came down to, we went with Raja Tours, and not endorsed or sponsored by them, but they had what we felt was the best price for the experience, the duration, the parks, the vehicles. They were also super responsive. So now once you have your safari booked, or at least on hold, maybe you have to pay a deposit at that point, it's now time to look for flights. And you'll know obviously from your itinerary, your in and out points. And we decided that we wanted to do this sort of triangular shaped itinerary where we're going from Nairobi to Lake Nakuru to Masai Mara, crossing the border down into Tanzania to the Serengeti and Ngorongoro Crater, up to Amboseli, and then back to Nairobi again. So our flights were going to be a round trip out of Nairobi. We decided also to come in a day before and leave a day after our safari, just so that we didn't run into any delays or challenges with incoming flights being delayed or outgoing, trying to get to the airport when we're leaving and there's traffic or whatnot. We wanted to take it and be easy and be more comfortable. So when it comes to booking other flights and travel, Google Flights, Skyscanner, using points and miles, all of them are great options. Think about repositioning flights. So if you're in a small market town in the United States or in Europe, think about getting yourself to a major hub for an airline that flies down to Africa. You might save some money that way. You might have better schedules. You know, I would say probably 6 to 9 months out, book your flights and get your hotels locked in, especially the airport hotels, because there's not many in Nairobi, so they will book out. If you can, book that as early as you can as well. All right, moving on, segment 2, packing and preparing. So we're not going to go into an in-depth packing sheet and list. We're going to do a little bit more top line because everyone's going to kind of vary, but we'll give you some generalities as to what you should be thinking about when you're packing. Number 1, make sure you have comfortable, loose-fitting clothing. You're going to be wearing them all day in varying temperature environments. So early morning could be cooler, afternoons could be hot, really hot, and they could be dusty. And then in the evenings, it starts cooling down again. So wear something where you can have a long sleeve to protect yourself from the sun. We wore long pants pretty much every day of the safari. Bring enough for maybe a week's worth. If you're going for more than a week, bring a week's worth. You can do laundry along the way at the resorts, the lodges, especially if you're staying more than 2 nights or staying 2 nights. It's not super expensive to do laundry. Or you could do laundry in the sink, in the bathtub, which is kind of what we do sometimes too. So this is a very casual trip. You don't need any super nice clothing and high-end stuff to go out for fancy dinners or fancy this, fancy that, because there is no places to go. The lodges are all very easygoing and casual, and the restaurants in them as well. They're People were walking in from the safari vehicle and going straight to dinner, and so you're dusty, you're dirty, you're maybe a little smelly from being out there, so don't overthink that. Secondly, neutral colors. If you're bright colored clothing, like a bright red, that may attract the wrong sort of animal behavior, so you don't want that. And then clothes that already have UV protection built in just adds another layer of protection against the sun, even when you're using sunscreen as well. Keep in mind that you're on safari. Yeah, you can look great for Instagram and all that stuff, but the focus shouldn't be you, it should be the animal. So the two things you're absolutely going to need is sunscreen and bug spray. The sun is real. You're at the equator or close to the equator. That sun is strong, but make sure you apply it at least a couple times a day. Bug spray, you absolutely need it. There are mosquitoes there with viruses and stuff, and you don't want any of that stuff. So I would recommend maybe 2 bottles for 2 weeks for 2 people. We used Repel. It's got DEET in it. It worked well for us. And then regular toiletries, whatever you typically bring that, bring enough. It's when you're out in safari, all the lodges have like little sundry stores where you can buy additional stuff, but it may not be what you prefer to use, so bring enough. The last piece of the packing puzzle is electronics, and because we were filming, we had a ton of them. We had 4 cameras plus our phones and all the chargers and accessories and mounts that we use to create our video. But for the average traveler, they're not going to need all that. Don't think that if you can't afford to do so, there's no point going on a safari, because it still is absolutely capturable by your phone, by a point and zoom, and most importantly, by your eyes. That's the best set of lenses right there. So go and see it for yourself. The other thing to bring are converters, and we use a little block one like this. It has all the different international plugs, and it has USB-C, USB-A, different inputs so that we can charge a variety of different gear, phones, laptops, etc. All at once. So this is a real handy, and it's super small. Other thing to bring are your battery bank chargers. This came in super handy. Just make sure it's in your carry-on bag, not in your checked luggage. If you're going to bring a laptop or an iPad or a Kindle, just realize that there's a lot of dust, and electronics like that don't mix since they're not weather sealed. Bring maybe some large Ziploc bags that you can fit your electronics in. So the other thing to make sure of as you're packing is your baggage allowance. And some of the airlines that we flew, we had a 7 kg or 15 pound allowance, which is a lot less than you would find in the United States. So make sure that whatever you're putting in your check bag and your carry-on bag is also going to pass the weight allowances of those carriers. There is a requirement for yellow fever, so that is a must. You must get a yellow fever vaccine, and the good news is that once you get it, it lasts a lifetime. You don't have to get it again. But there's also a range of recommended vaccinations that you get, and that comes to a personal choice, a personal level of risk, comfort, etc. We decided to get them all. So when I say get them all, that means hepatitis A, hepatitis B, cholera, rabies, typhoid. I think that's it. Yeah, I think that's it. And some of those are 2-shot dosages. So we had to go back week after week after week to get another set of doses. So make sure you plan in advance to get those that you are comfortable with besides the yellow fever, which is required, and make sure you've done that process before you go. When you complete a regimen of vaccinations, you will get a yellow card. And on that yellow card, it will have the information for the vaccination you have taken. You need to bring that because they will ask to see proof that that is your proof. So make sure you get the yellow card. Beyond the vaccination cards, obviously the most important thing is your passport. Make sure that you have validity for 6 months beyond the travel dates. For both Kenya and Tanzania, as a US citizen, we needed to have visas, which we could do online in advance. We filled out the forms, scanned in our passports, etc. And then within a week, we had our visas for both countries. We had them on our phone and we printed them out as well. So that when we were arriving or crossing the border from Kenya to Tanzania, we were able to present our visas right there and made the process super smooth. And we had a little bit of anxiety about the border crossing because you leave one guide on one side of the border and then you walk through on your own and you meet the next guide on the other end. But what happens in the middle? It's a super simple process. You line up, you go to a desk, they scan your look at your passport, do the typical things that an immigration at an airport would do, check your visas, your yellow card for your yellow fever vaccination, and then stamp you through, and then you're on your way. All right, so now you're in Kenya, Tanzania, or somewhere else in Africa, and you're there for your African safari. What can you expect from the lodges, the game drives, the just general day-to-day of how everything goes? So we're going to start off with the lodges, and here's what you can expect when you go to a lodge, and that includes tented camps as well. We did a mid-range tour, so when you see the lodges that we stayed in during our trip, that was representative of a mid-range tour. When you arrive, there are going to be bellman porters there greeting you. Let's make no mistake about it, everybody's looking for a tip. So carry small bills of the local currency with you. And the front desk can also make change for you as well as convert money as well. Generally not at the best exchange rates, but you kind of want to do that at a proper bank ATM. And when we landed in Kenya, in Nairobi Airport, there was an ATM just outside the horseshoe of the airport terminal building. When you exit from arrivals, you can just walk right over to it and you can get cash out with your ATM card, 4-digit PIN, so make sure it has that. But we were able to get local currency really fast, really easily, and at a good exchange rate. For the staff at the hotel, you will see also a tip box, generally near the front desk, and that is tips for the rest of the hotel staff. So when you're prepaid through a safari tour, you're not tipping generally the wait staff at the hotel lodges, restaurants, or the housekeeping. So you would want to drop a few bills into that tip box as well. You know, lodges are a great experience. With that said, generally you're not spending too much time at each one because you are there for a night maybe, and then the next morning you're in your vehicle heading to the next park. And then if you have a morning and an afternoon game drive, you'll get back for lunch, you'll have a couple hours, and then you'll go be back out again, and then returning around 7 o'clock, having dinner, and pretty much going to bed because you're exhausted from being out all day. Lodge rooms are gonna vary based on, obviously, budget level again. We were again in mid-range, and they were super comfortable. We had no complaints. In fact, I think they surprised us with how nice they were. AC is generally, air conditioning is generally widely accessible. The lodges can be spread out, so if you have accessibility needs, make sure your tour operator knows that. One more thing is water. Drink bottled and not tap water. So when it comes to food at the lodges, if you have any dietary considerations, make sure your tour operator knows that in advance. But when you check in at the front table desk for the restaurant, make sure you mention that as well. All of the restaurants we ate at were buffet style. They all felt decent quality, good quality. Nothing blew our socks off. They were all good, and a waiter or waitress will bring you drinks from the bar, etc., that you would order. Breakfast had a typical Western stuff: eggs, bacon, sausage, English baked beans, toasts, cereals, and fruit. We kind of shied away from some of the fruit stuff, just for being careful. Lunches and dinners were a more international / local cuisine. Freshly made prepared pastas, you would have Indian dishes, you would have local dishes. I will say that all the lodges seem to follow almost sort of the same menu pattern, where by day 4, we're like, we just saw that yesterday, or we saw that 2 days ago. So the food did get kind of repetitive, but that is a small price to pay for the overarching experience that we had. On that note, when it comes to food, your food is generally included. So your breakfast, lunch, and dinners will be included in your meals. And again, make sure that's specific in your quote. So you see that listed for every single day that you're traveling. But your beverages beyond, I think, water, tea, and coffee are not. If you want sodas, if you want alcohol, beers were super cheap. The local beers were super cheap. I mean, we were paying less than $1 for a beer. You pay cash for that, or sign it to the hotel, your hotel lodge bill. Tenting camps, again, range from budget level to super basic tents to glamping at the far end, and we were in the middle. We had basic power in our tented camp, which gave us a light, essentially, in the bathroom and then the bed area of the tent. There was no place to charge anything in the tented camp. What they set up in the communal dining area are charging stations that you can go charge your stuff. So when we would be at meals, we would charge everything. I also brought battery packs. So I have a battery pack, which I would charge my cameras with. So now that we've talked about lodges, we've talked about food and rooms and all that, let's talk about what happens when you're going out on safari. So first off is you're gonna have an early start. You're gonna be having breakfast around 6:30, maybe 7 a.m. at the latest, and you're gonna be in your game vehicle at 7:30 in the morning. And then from there, you're gonna be out for the next 4 hours or so. So with that, make sure you have bottled water with you, and usually your guide will have bottled water, but always confirm that there is going to be when you get into a game vehicle. So now that you're going in the safari vehicle, be patient. Animals are wild, so you don't know what you're going to see. You don't know when it's going to take for you to see it or where they're going to be. So just be patient. Don't blame your guide. Your guide is exceedingly knowledgeable, and your guide is going to do his or her best to find those animals. They're gonna, know from experience where the watering holes are, know animal behavior, and or talking to other guides on the CB radio, trying to find where some animals potentially are. But be patient. There were stretches of 40 minutes to an hour where we really didn't see much, but we were always happy and thankful for where we were and what we were seeing and just experiencing. And it gave us those moments where we didn't need to pick up a camera and take a shot of something, because we could just enjoy what we were seeing around us, even if it didn't have that animal that you so desperately want to see. We were exceedingly lucky and fortunate with what we saw, but we still didn't see everything we wanted to see. We wanted to see the leopards, rhinos. We saw 2 in the far distance, and then we saw 1 in a thicket bushes. I know we had definitely hopes to see the big 5, which are the elephants, the lions, the buffalo, the rhinos, and the leopards. So we really did see 3 really well, but that was okay because what we did see was just absolutely amazing. So one of the things we had no clue about was the dust. The dust is real. It gets everywhere. You start your day fresh and clean. By within an hour, 2 hours, you are caked in it. It looked like you just had a real bad spray tan where it malfunctioned. So a couple of recommendations would be bring maybe some wet wipes to sort of freshen yourself up, wipe yourself down, and maybe like a small cloth that you can then use to wipe off the wet wipe stuff so you don't just smear everything. And then secondly, if you've got electronics gear, bring a little air thing to clean off and brush off any dust on your camera gear, and then put your camera gear in baggies, like Ziploc bags, to help further protect it. Because even though I put my camera gear back in the backpack in the back seat of the safari vehicle, there was still dust getting into my inside of my bag was caked in dust, and I'm still getting stuff out of it. The other thing is, I also didn't think of how many bruises I was going to get while being in that safari vehicle. The roads are rough, both going between the parks as well as in the parks themselves. And if you're standing up like I did, you are bouncing around. As you're going in between parks, you're sitting down, you're bouncing around. So I had bruises on my shoulders, on my hips, from banging into the seats. So prepare to have a few bruises along the way. But again, not complaining. It was all worth it in the end. So let's talk about animals. And we sort of touched on that in the last section when we talked about what to expect on a safari and animals and being patient and all that stuff. But with the animals you do see, one of the best parts about it is seeing them in their natural habitat and seeing them just behave the way they were meant to behave. Not behavior impacted because they're in a zoo within 4 walls in a cage or something. So watching that cheetah scan the horizon looking for their next meal was amazing. Watching the elephants and lions come together and clash, and the elephants pushing them out from the thicket of grass, watching how they interacted with each other, communicating with their trunks, was one of those National Geographic moments that you are in the center of that is just unbelievable. You will never look at an animal the same way again after seeing them out in the wild. But I think the key to enjoying a safari is watching the animal behavior and learning about it and why they're doing what they're doing. That's what's going to make your safari so much better. So our last section is key learnings and some takeaways that we had. So one of our key takeaways was we really didn't get to experience and enjoy the lodges much. Because we're doing morning, afternoon game drives or full day game drives, we maybe had a couple hours in the afternoon in between game drives to enjoy the resort, the lodge. And these are super nice places. Building in some downtime, maybe building in a half day where you're not doing anything but can just relax and recharge, would have been a great idea. Secondly is ask tons of questions. Don't be afraid to ask questions about what's happening, what you're seeing, as well as what you'd like to do and see if that's possible. They're there to make your trip the best trip it can be. Also, tipping. Understanding the tipping culture is very important, and understanding, conversely, the exchange rate. You know, $1 is 130 shillings, I think, but in Tanzania, $1 equals like 2,500 and something Tanzanian shillings. So trying to work out in your head in the moment what something's worth is very challenging. So get a better understanding of the currency exchange and what something is really worth. Double check with your tour operator in advance whether or not they're going to provide additional binoculars from the one the guide uses for your availability to use, or bring your own. And then lastly, put cameras and phones down and just use your eyes. I took over 27 hours worth of footage and thousands of pictures, but I purposefully put the cameras down and just looked at what we were seeing. Another key learning we had was understanding the distance and time you're going to be spending in a safari vehicle, not on safari. You're going to be spending a lot of time going in between parks. And the Kenyan roads are not the best. They're uncomfortable, they're bumpy. So understand how much time you're going to spend. And if that doesn't work for you, if you want to minimize that, then maybe think about altering your itinerary, cutting a park or switching to different parks that are closer to each other so that you're not spending more time in the vehicle, not on safari. So I think that's it for the how-to, and I hope you guys found this interesting. And if you did and would like to see more of these types of videos that are a companion or complement our travel film series, let us know, drop a line in the comments. Also, if you have an additional question that we didn't answer, please also let us know in the comments. Put it in there. I'm usually pretty good at getting back to you comments within several hours to a day. This video is going to come out 2 videos after our Africa series. In fact, we've released 2 other videos since the Africa series, one in the Cotswolds, where we had a 3-day short break from London, as well as the south of France, where we spent a week going from Cannes all the way through to Menton on the Italian border. If you haven't checked out those videos, please go and check them out. So coming up on this channel, we have our trip to Finland in January, where we went to Helsinki, as well as up to Lapland and had some amazing adventures there in Lapland. So if you've ever wondered what it's like to be in Finland, as well as at the Arctic Circle of Finland in January, that video is going to be a fun one to watch. We also went to Tallinn, Estonia, a city that just kind of blew us away with how beautiful and pretty it was. We also have trips to Amsterdam, Belgium, Japan, and Southeast Asia, so a lot of great stuff coming up. So if you like this video, give us a big fat thumbs up, consider subscribing, as well as hit that notification bell so you know that when the next videos are released. Till then, thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you on the next adventure.